I've come a long way since I started this YouTube channel. I built a French cleat wall to hang all my things on. I even keep myself relatively tidy nowadays. Look, you can see work surface. I've acquired new tools like this thicknesser and this router table to keep my coffee mugs on. I even build things that don't fall apart. I organise my wood into size and stock and type and keep it organised all of the time. But there's only one thing missing from this YouTube journey, other than thousands of subscribers and monetization. A sign. That's what I've been saving this spot for. And in this video, you're going to see me just make it up as I go along. Spoiler alert, I'm pleased with it. You might think it looks... So after marking out a square 40mm and spraying myself with spray adhesive, smooth, I then stick my logo straight onto that square. Now I'm using an old piece of plywood here. It might look alright from what you're seeing, but the other side's been painted with emulsion. But it was free, so I wasn't going to say no. The idea with sticking my logo onto the board is not for that logo to be seen as is. I'm going to use that to route out my logo. But I'm going to let you into a secret. I'm not known for having a steady hand, and I don't know whether this is going to work at this point. Because I want to get started straight away, I'm just sprinkling some sawdust on that exposed glue. Now this will just adhere to it and it'll stop my sleeves catching on it while I'm trying to do some very intricate routing. And after a bit of deliberation and worrying where to start and what this is going to go like, I actually get to routing. I'm just going slow and steady, shallow passes. There's obviously not much footage I can show you of doing this because my hand covers everything. I'm using the wrong router mount or whatever you call it, and my face is right up against it. Yeah, I concentrated, I took my time, and it mostly worked out alright. So I swapped out the router bit for a slightly larger one. I'm using a pointed routery bit. But then I did this. After all of those tiny letters, I set the depth too deep and it just backfired on me. And now I've got a giant whopping hole on that B. It's huge. At this point, I kind of wanted to give up. I started peeling off all the paper. I couldn't believe I'd done all of the tiny intricate lettering and then screwed up on the thicker stuff. So I just rage peeled. I did, however, walk away for a bit, took a breath and then went back to it. I thought, I've come this far, I'm just going to finish it off and see what happens. So after doing all that, I've got the laborious task of sanding. I'm just going to use some really old pads for this. Pads that would normally go in the bin because that paper's just going to clog them all up. So 5 minutes of sanding and you get to see kind of the final look. It's not the final look, it's nowhere near the final look. I say that, but I don't even know what the final look's going to be at this point. I said earlier, I am literally just making this up as I go along. Despite my screw up, that's pretty decent. Did that with these shaky hands. Gotta fix this though. Now that I've got something resembling lettering, the next order of business is to make that sign into a circle. So I'm using my very homemade circle jig, which is literally just a length of wood with a router attached to it. I'm just going to take shallow passes here and then finish it up with the jigsaw. Told you the back of that plywood was minging, didn't I? Now I haven't sanded this very well, and there's a very good reason for that, because I'm going to be using epoxy to fill these gaps. Now, this epoxy has got a shelf life of 6 months, and I'm fairly sure I bought it more than 6 months ago, so I really need to use it up. This was used for a desk build, which you can look on my channel for. Anyway, part A, part B, equal parts, mix in some black dye, pour it in. What could go wrong? Oh, that could go wrong. It has gone off. This is rock hard. I think there's still some liquid in there. I'm using some of this black pigment powdery stuff. I've used this before. Now, I'll give you a warning. If you want that kind of clear resin look, the one that is semi-translucent, then I would always go for the droplet liquid form dyes. Now, I say that as if I know what I'm doing. All I know is this stuff makes it very opaque and no light gets through. But that's fine. It's not what I need. A little bit for you. Ah! So after accepting the fact that it was going to be very opaque, I then used a syringe. You can get these from Boots, which is like a pharmacy in the UK, and I used that just to try and keep the epoxy a little bit under control. The neater you are here, the less sanding you have to do afterwards, and sanding epoxy is a bit sad. Nearly as sad as sanding wood. Whilst not hugely important on a small project like this, I do like to run over it with a blowtorch. It just gets rid of a lot of those bubbles and it actually loosens the epoxy up a little bit. You can see here that I'm about to squirt some more in just because that heated epoxy then just seeps into all the little cracks and crevices. Now comes my least favourite part, waiting. It's quite cold too. Could be here like 3 days. After waiting somewhat patiently for a few days, it was actually a week in between real life work, I then went back and gave it a proper sanding. I'm going to work my way through the grits. I'm going to do 80, 120, 180, and I'm going to leave it at that. This doesn't need to have a mirror finish because it's for my workshop. What I will say here is if you're working with epoxy and sanding it especially, make sure you've got your shop vac or dust extraction or whatever hooked up to that sander, because epoxy gives off a ton of dust and I'm fairly certain that can't be good for your lungs. Quite pleased with that. I did the wrong thing. You shouldn't route into plywood because it splinters and it splits and you get dodgy bits like this. But it kind of worked. It's kind of flat, it's kind of smooth. Once it's got a bit of finish on, this will really pop. Now, a good woodworker on YouTube does this nice intricate little pattern to make these circles look like saw blades. I'm not a good woodworker though, so that's not what we're doing. Right. These are all scraps from where pallet breaking hasn't gone as successfully as I sometimes advertise it has done. And I'm going to somehow glue all of these onto this. And then I'm going to do something else, but I don't know what yet. I am literally making this up because I didn't expect it to get this far. Let's see what happens. I'd like to say there's a particular look to what I'm going for here, or a science behind it, or some kind of insight. There's none. These are just scraps that I'm putting on an excessive amount of glue because I couldn't be bothered to glue each one individually. Now, if you're there thinking, sitting there with your cup of tea while I'm in the cold garage, if you're there thinking that look, I'm with you. I'm hoping this is going to be one of those projects where at the end it looks really good and you never guessed what I was planning. I'm hoping that because I'm not planning anything. Those brad nails are quite long. I thought they were short enough. Bucket of sawdust. I mean, you'd never ever know that I'm just making this up as I go along, would you? So here it is, it's the next day for me. The glue has all dried, the sawdust is kind of stuck to the glue enough. Now I need to trim these bits. That would have been easier if I'd done it first, but I don't like doing things the easy way. My first go-to was to use a handsaw, or maybe even a pull saw to do this, but I didn't have enough room to get in between those bits that were sticking out, so I thought I'll cut the first couple off with a jigsaw. But then after the first couple didn't break, I just thought, I'll do it all with a jigsaw. Took 30 seconds. Easy. So originally I was going to use my flush cut bit to round all this off and make it nice and pretty. And I can't do that because of the whole going through too far with the brad nails unless I want to remove all the brad nails. So I'm just going to leave it rustic, my favourite method of woodworking. Now for the next step, where everything could be undone. What could go wrong? For anybody that's new to the channel, you might not know that the blowtorch is my favourite woodworking tool. I use it on quite a lot of my projects and I'm not even ashamed of it. Burnt stuff looks cool and burning it makes you cool. Fact. I'm just using what they call a map torch, which is actually for plumbers, I believe. The canisters are less than 20 quid a pop and I'm only on my second canister as we speak and I've been using them for nearly a year now. Now that it was suitably burnt to a crisp, there was only one thing left to do, and that was apply a little bit of finish. All I'm going for here is Danish oil. I'm not going to wax it or anything like that because this is going to sit on the wall. I'm going to apply this liberally and just let it soak into that burnt wood. To be honest, wherever you've burnt wood, it's so dry that it just soaks up the oil, so you don't have to worry about having to buff it in. So I'm just going to slather on a coat and see what it looks like. But one thing that's already making me happy is how much that logo in the middle pops just from that bit of oil. I'm very happy indeed. There we go. I'm officially a real YouTuber now. Now, this is a little bit of me. It's not a saw blade, it's no fancy graphic or anything like that, but it's made out of pallet scraps and I've burnt it, which is kind of me. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got anything out of this, please leave a like, a comment, subscribe, all helps me out. Till the next one, take care.